now checking out
Renada Romain, cuz.
It is my pleasure to welcome back Dr. A.R. Bernard to the show.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
And congratulations on a wonderful book. Much needed.
Well, I'm very excited about the traction that it's getting. It's written so that it's not too thick. People buy books based upon how thick they are.
That is true.
But it has substance, even though it's an easy read.
It is. It is really burning up the charts. Let me just reintroduce you to the show. You've been on the show before. Sure. You are the CEO, founder, senior pastor of Christian Cultural Center in Brooklyn. Also, my pastor. I love saying that. And one of New York's, and I would say one of the nation's most influential leaders.
Thank you.
And I will say a New York Times bestselling author. We're going to speak it into existence. So you just released a book, 4 Things Women Want from a Man.
Yeah, the audacity to tell women what they want.
Let me put this disclaimer out there because I think it's going to get real hot up in here, as it always does. If anybody's offended by this discussion today, I guess you're not a real man.
Ooh. Well, it's a book written to women, but for men.
Yes.
It's designed to give women a framework with which to make better choices in their relationship with men. And it's also designed to give men a standard with which to measure their own manhood.
You know, so you're going to ruffle some feathers.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. It's truth. All truth is confrontational.
It is. But, you know, why are so many men just missing these characteristics, these 4 characteristics: maturity, decisiveness, consistency, strength?
Wow, I'm just listening to you rattle them off like that. So you're making me proud.
I know about heart.
You know, men are not taught. We have a generation of not only fatherless men, but fatherless women. And, you know, especially in communities of color, we are in crisis, identity crisis, family crisis, and we're feeling the results of generations of problems within the family structure, within our community. So this book really looks to educate men, because when a man is educated with respect to his relationship with a woman, and he takes on the characteristics mentioned in the book, maturity, decisiveness, consistency, and strength, it has a liberating effect upon the woman. I say when a man is the man that God designed him to be, it liberates the woman to be the woman that God created her to be.
I almost feel like you were looking at my notes because I wrote down cultural influences and identity crisis because I feel, you know, I'm not that old, but I'm not that young. So, you know, in my experience dealing with, you know, some of these men out here in the world, you know, I kind of feel like a lot of men are still searching.
Yeah.
So they don't have a good identity, a good sense of self. So if you don't have that, you won't be mature. You won't be consistent.
Absolutely. Identity has to do with self-concept, out of which comes your sense of meaning, out of which comes your sense of purpose. But it begins with a healthy self-concept. If you are struggling to have a healthy relationship with yourself, how are you going to love others healthily, especially when it comes to a woman? You know, we are in a crisis in our society in many, many different ways. And 85% of relationships are doomed to fail. 40 to 50% of first marriages end in divorce. And the second time around, the rate goes up to 60%.
And it's higher for African Americans.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
So what is it in our culture that needs to change, like now?
Again, identity. Because we've come through, and, you know, someone will say, okay, we're beyond slavery and what happened, but they fail to understand the generational impact of that kind of marginalization, economic determination, as well as the scarring of self-esteem. This can continue from generation to generation to generation. And slavery was psychologically, scientifically, and consistently applied to break down the black family.
Right.
You know, so when we have these portraits of the black family as a social problem, a pathology of illegitimate births, a family that's centered around a matriarchal female with men of low self-esteem and usually unemployed. All right, what does that say to us as a people?
Yeah.
We've got another problem in that women especially women of color, have experienced unprecedented wealth and education in this last generation. 60% of college enrollment today are female. Only 40% are male. So we have this emerging female power class that men are not prepared to deal with.
They don't have the capacity to deal with it.
Wait. They have the capacity, but they need the instruction. They need the wisdom. They need the guidance. They need the knowledge.
So when a guy tells me, oh, you're so headstrong, maybe that just means he doesn't have the tools or the guidance.
Well, when a man is secure in himself, and let me point to the last one of the four things, strength.
Yes.
When a man is strong, he's secure in himself. He's self-asserted, not arrogant, but he is strong in his own identity, and he has the courage to live out his convictions. And out of that strength, he can afford to be gentle and kind to a woman. Right. You know, there's a wonderful passage in Proverbs that says a man's kindness and gentleness is what makes him attractive. But if a man is insecure and weak, then if the woman can out-talk him, if she's making more money than him, if she's more educated than him, then he's going to look to verbal and physical and emotional abuse
and
with which to
things.
assert his own control and dominance over the woman.
But you have to be taught.
Have to be taught.
Oh, man.
Have to be taught.
Too many relationships end up in just a toxic, unhealthy situation. And it can be avoided if we knew what to do.
Absolutely.
Or what not to do. Now, in the book, you ask us, what trait would we add or replace? I would add integrity. Where does integrity fall in these four characteristics?
It falls under maturity.
Ooh.
Integrity is a cornerstone of character. Honesty is the core of integrity. And when a man has character, all right, it brings him to the place of maturity where he's responsible for his words, his thoughts, his motives, his actions, his attitude.
Example. We're talking to the nation. Let's
talk about value. Let's have some plain talk here.
Before we get into values, though,
values, but the value of character. Why it's important. All right. So I'm going to pick on Tiger Woods. Okay. It's just an object lesson.
Yes.
All right. He was the first $1 billion athlete.
Yeah.
All right. That $1 billion was broken up into two pieces, 900 million in endorsements and 100 million because of his golfing talent. When it came out that his character was inconsistent with the image that companies were placing on their watches, on their cereal box or wherever, those endorsements began to be pulled
immediately.
And he went right back down to 100 million. And then that was shaky because even his talent was not what it was before. So you look at what his talent gave him, the lack of character to sustain that talent and the heights of that talent and success undermined it. And it collapsed.
I heard a wise man once say, your talent will take you to places that only your character can sustain.
Come on, you're preaching real good right now.
This is a must read, not just for women, but also for men.
Absolutely.
So that we can better understand each other and start having healthier relationships.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about the cell phone. We are in a digital age, right? For many people, the phone has become a tool for infidelity. From the DM to social media, there's so many blurred lines out there between business and personal. We were talking about integrity during the last break, and values and principles you speak of in the book. What are some of the things people need to be aware of to avoid certain temptations?
I think the number one thing that every human being has to be aware of is their own weaknesses. You've got to build systems in your life to protect you from you. Because if you don't do that, then the very things that you said you'll never do, given the right circumstances, situation, and people, you will do those very things.
I'll never forget. You said this to me years ago, myself and a colleague. I don't know if you remember. But you said to us, we were meeting with you in your office, and you said, I don't know how we got on the topic, but you said, I don't meet with women in my office alone. I make sure someone else is present or the door is open.
That's correct.
That is
That's correct.
a principal
That's
rule.
building into your life a set of rules, systems that protect you from yourself or even protect you from perceptions.
Right.
Because in our world, perception goes halfway around the world before reality gets out of bed.
All right. When we left off, I asked you, how long is too long to stay in a relationship without measurable growth in reasonable time? When a man is dragging his feet, what is that a sign of? Is it weakness or immaturity?
Okay, the question is he dragging his feet in the relationship or towards the formalization of a relationship?
In the relationship. So you guys have been in a relationship for a long time. And he's dragging his feet on the marriage proposal. What is that a sign of?
Okay, so this is leading up to the formalization in marriage.
Yeah, I mean, 6 years.
You're married already or you're not married?
You're not married.
Oh, you're not married. Okay.
I mean, after 6 years, it's like,
yeah.
a woman is going to,
why hasn't he popped the question?
What's going on?
There is no one size fits all. But I will say, there needs to be, again, like you quoted the principle, there must be measurable progress in reasonable time. And if not, then we have to make some substantial changes because life is short. It goes by very quickly.
Yeah.
So if you are having a 10, 15, 20-year dating period before making the decision to get married, half the life is gone.
Why do men cheat?
Why do men cheat? I wish the answer was simple, that they just lack self-control. But love is complex. Relationships are complex. The simple bottom line is they made a decision to do it. All right, which means they cast off consideration for the consequences. And that is adolescent behavior. Because adolescents are about immediate gratification, short-term experiences, so they don't think in the long term and consider the long-term impact of their decisions, their choices, their actions. So when a man does that, he slips into adolescence. But if he's looking for something, we don't know what's going on in his psyche, what's going on with him emotionally. Right. But apart from the psychoanalysis of it, all right, it's a decision that he makes. It's a choice and a value judgment that he made with that decision.
And often, many people don't ever come back from an infidelity situation in relationships, in marriages. Forgiveness is not an easy thing. People, I know you're supposed to forgive, right? We're supposed to forgive. But how can you forgive if you're not taught? How?
Yeah.
To forgive.
And forgiveness is, number one, not a process. Forgiveness is a decision that you make and a gift that you give to the person that wounded you, but also it's a gift that you give to yourself so that you can move on from that wound. Because if you don't forgive, then you yoke yourself to that sin, to that trespass for the rest of your life. Jesus said, whatever you are yoked to in life, you carry the burden of in life. So you can carry the burden of that hurt for the rest of your life while that other person has gone on about their business. Cool. Exactly.
Well, unforgiveness showed up in your marriage with your lovely wife, Pastor Karen, and as well as bitterness. I want to read an excerpt on what you say bitterness is. Sure. Bitterness must take root before it springs up. In other words, it festers in the heart and begins to manifest in your relationships. It stems from disappointments that accumulate over time but are not acknowledged or addressed. These disappointments result from expectations that were never met. And whether they were reasonable or unreasonable, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Exactly. Yeah, that kind of sums it up right there. And when there's frustration in a relationship because expectations are not being met, frustration comes from two things: unfulfilled needs and unresolved problems. And when that continues to go for a period of time, the bitterness goes so deep that it begins to color the lens through which you see the relationship and see other relationships. There are women who did not deal with a bitter relationship that they had. and they took that bitterness into new relationships.
Now, is that why? Because I feel like Black women specifically get a bad rap. Black women, you always hear men, especially Black men, saying how, we are bitter and angry, the angry Black woman. Is that because maybe that woman is dealing with some bitterness from a past relationship?
There's a strong possibility, or it can relate to her own self-esteem, her own self-worth, her own self-image, that she has not resolved that identity crisis in her own life. But I will tell you, more often than not, it is a wound that has remained open and was never healed. And she just continues to carry it from one relationship to another, because bitterness is, again, colors the lens through which you see life and you see other people. So, look, and forgiveness is this, all right? Forgiveness is letting go. It's moving on. So if you owe me $5,000 and I forgive you because you haven't paid me back and you have no intentions of paying me back, but I forgive you, I let it go.
Right.
Every time I see you, I'm not going to say, there goes my $5,000.
But are you going to lend me more money?
No, because I've developed wisdom to know that you're not responsible with that kind of transaction.
Yeah.
So out of that wisdom, I will alter the level of trust that I have for you.
Yes.
See? Unless, because I value the relationship, I'm willing to give time for the reestablishment of trust. Infidelity is not the end of a relationship.
It doesn't have to be.
Jesus said there's only one reason that a divorce occurs, and it's not because of infidelity, because infidelity can be forgiven and the relationship can be built stronger than it was before that weakness manifested itself. Jesus said the only reason is hardness of heart. So when a person's heart becomes so hardened, so callous to the relationship and the situation, all right, they want out, they want to move on. There's not much you can say to that person.
When we left off, we were talking about bitterness, forgiveness. Now, when trust is broken, it's very, very hard to repair that. You might be dealing with unforgiveness and bitterness. But what about respect? Because I almost feel like when trust is broken, respect is lost.
Respect is lost. You're absolutely right.
As well. How do you rebuild that? How do you rebuild that in your own marriage? It took you a year.
It took time. It took time because reconciliation is immediate. Restoration is a process, and it takes time. It also depends on how invested each person is in that restoration process.
So both have to work at it.
Oh, absolutely.
So let me just give you a quick example.
Okay.
So let's say you're in a relationship and I don't know, it was an infidelity situation and the cell phone was a part of it. So if that woman now wants to check that man's phone, maybe she shouldn't be doing that anyway. Shouldn't he allow her to see that he's on the up and up?
If he's serious about rebuilding trust, then he'll give his wife his codes, all of his access, his passwords, and say, here, baby, it's all yours. Nothing to hide.
Yes.
My wife has all of my passwords.
Really?
My wife has the access code to my cell phone. I leave my cell phone on the night table. Nothing to hide.
I still don't have the codes, Pastor.
Nothing to hide. Because, women are looking for safety and security.
Absolutely.
And when the trust is there, they feel safe in that relationship. They feel secure in that relationship. And I'm not going to let something like a cell phone break down that trust unless the man is trying to hide something.
Absolutely. It's a lack of maturity, lack of strength, some little weakness in that relationship, maybe.
Yes.
All right, I want to jump on to women real quick because you wrote the book. It's not just pointing out traits that men don't have. You wrote something very interesting that I want to read real quick. You says, most men simply aren't hardwired to be keen observers of their wives. They often miss obvious signs that could have helped them avoid headaches and heartbreaks. Women, on the other hand, are very keen observers. They understand their husband's patterns. They understand the ways their men are likely to behave in any given situation. Wives know their husbands better than anyone, other than God, of course, does. But often women don't understand themselves as well as they understand their men. That really stood out to me. How is that possible?
Well, women tend to be intuitive. Men have to learn. They have to observe. There's an interesting passage in Scripture. It says, husbands, dwell with your wives according to knowledge. The Greek word there is gnosis, which means to study. So a man has a responsibility to make his woman a study. And in order to do that, he has to develop the art of listening and paying attention. The number one complaint that women have about men is that men don't listen. So that has to be intentional. That has to be developed over time.
Yeah.
So, and another thing, women and men are different.
Yes.
They're really different.
Obviously.
You know, when we talk about equality and of rights and roles, we cannot get away from the fact that men and women are wired differently.
Yeah.
Women tend to be driven by intuition, common sense, experience, and collaboration.
Are we just smarter?
I wouldn't say smarter. You think differently. You know, when a man thinks, you know, he's got to think out of one side of his brain at a time and then shut down and switch over. Women,
we can
you
multitask.
think out of both at the same time. It's not fair. I didn't design it. God did. But that's the reality that we've got to work with.
Oh, my goodness. 4 things women want from a man if you want to save your marriage or your relationship, or even just have the tools before you even enter one. This book is a must-have. What's so amazing about the book, though, is that these 4 qualities transcend relationships.
Oh, yeah.
These are the same qualities that folks should look for in a leader.
Absolutely. Maybe that's the next book. Another
Ooh.
book.
Is that
Qualities
is
of
that
a
an
leader.
exclusive?
That's the qualities of a leader. Maybe we have an exclusive here. But it is true. And remember, when a woman submits to a man, she's submitting to his leadership. And she's looking for these qualities in him as a leader. She wants him to be responsible.
Yes.
She wants him to have the right decorum, being aware of and knowing when and how to conduct himself in any given circumstance and situation. And that's why women say, I just wish she'd grow up.
Yes.
You know, that's what she's talking about. That's what she wants. That's what she needs for him, to respect him. And a loss of respect is the number one cause for divorce in our society.
That brings me to my last question. You stated this a while ago, one of my favorite quotes on relationships. Relationships are like bridges. Wisdom is necessary to know which ones to cross and which ones to burn.
Yeah.
How do you know when it's time to burn that relationship? Because, you know, growth is a process and change. And you have a lot of men out there that were never taught this.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them are hearing this stuff for the very first time. I'm talking old men.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do we throw them away? You know, what do you do if, you know, if you're a man out there, someone listening might be dealing with, you know, a man that doesn't have these qualities?
Mm-hmm.
You know, does she end the relationship or?
Well, you know, a lot has to do with the man himself. Change is the only constant in life. Change is the essence of maturation. So you'll never mature unless you're willing to change. That's why a stubborn man will always be an ignorant man, because he refuses to change. So if this man is open to being taught and really committed, especially if they've been together for a while, he's got to be committed to a fast-track change process in order to secure his relationship with that woman. But if he's not, then she's got to make that hard decision and not spend the rest of her life with false hope. You know, there's another passage of Scripture in Proverbs that says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And when a woman's hope for change in the man is deferred again and again and again, all right, she's going to become emotionally damaged. And then, with or without him, she's now got a process to go through to heal herself.
So that she won't bring that baggage into another relationship. This is some awesome stuff, man. I can talk to you all day. One last thing I want to say, though. You know, in the Jewish culture, they have bar mitzvahs, you know, the coming of age. I think we need to start something in our own culture, because our young boys need this book. I think this is what they need to be taught early so that they can grow up with the right tools.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're going to be working on. There are programs, rites of passage programs. There are boys to men programs out there, but not necessarily around these particular principles. So one of the things that I look forward to doing is creating some type of program and process that leads a young boy to a certain age where he understands the principles of this book, and then begins to apply them. Because adolescence takes time.
Yes.
And the scientists say that it's not until a man's mid-20s that his frontal lobes develop so that he can make the right choices. But you only think to the level of what you're exposed to.
Yes.
So if you're exposed to these things early in life, that means it's going to change your thinking in your teen years and in your early 20s.